Welcome back to CIA Declassified. To understand AEDART, you must first understand the chilling climate of the late 1950s and early 1960s. This was the era of the Iron Curtain, a time when the world was sliced in two by ideologies that demanded total devotion. In this landscape, the Central Intelligence Agency wasn't just worried about soldiers, they were worried about slide rules and lab coats. The race for the stars in the depths of the atom were being won in the minds of men who were essentially prisoners of the Soviet state. These scientists were the most guarded assets in the Eastern Bloc, living in closed cities like Arzamas 16, places that didn't appear on any map and were ringed with barbed wire and elite security. The agency faced a terrifying reality. The next breakthrough in intercontinental ballistic missiles or thermonuclear yields could happen tomorrow in a lab in Moscow, and the West would be blind to it. This required the birth of a policy that viewed human intelligence not just as data, but as a biological cargo that had to be physically moved. AEDART was the logistical skeleton of that ambition. It was the policy that dictated how a man could be plucked from a high-security research facility and transported across 3 borders before the Soviet KGB even realized a chair was empty. It was about stealing the future from the hands of the enemy. The complexity of these arrangements was staggering. Imagine a physicist working in a laboratory in Novosibirsk. He is monitored 24 hours a day. He cannot simply walk to an embassy. To get him out, the agency had to orchestrate a surgical removal. This wasn't a slow burn defection, it was a high-speed heist. AEDART provided the framework for specialized Snatch-Teams to penetrate the interior of the Soviet Union, establish contact, and execute a getaway that utilized everything from modified high-speed aircraft to clandestine maritime rendezvous. It was a world of cold calculus. Every second spent inside the red zone was a gamble with the lives of the extraction team and the asset. Loyalty wasn't just a feeling, it was a verified psychological profile managed by the Office of Scientific Intelligence. If a scientist held the key to Soviet radar jamming technology, the cost of his extraction was irrelevant. AEDART was the mechanism that allowed the agency to say yes to the most dangerous missions imaginable, ensuring that the glass bridge between East and West remained open for those with the right intellectual currency. Imagine the sheer weight of the 1960s, a world balanced on a knife edge of nuclear annihilation. Every scientific mind was a potential weapon. To lose a physicist was to lose a continent's worth of security. This was the environment that birthed the glass bridge. It wasn't just a strategy, it was a desperate high-stakes heist of human capital. The Snatch-Teams lived in a world where a missed second meant a lifetime in a Siberian gulag. They operated in the spaces between shadows, moving through cities that didn't exist on public maps. This was the true front line of the Cold War. In the dead of night, in the frozen forest outside of Leningrad, these teams waited for a signal that might never come. They were the ghost of the agency, the men and women tasked with the impossible. They had to navigate a labyrinth of Soviet checkpoints and internal passports, all while carrying a target who might change their mind at the last second. The psychological toll was immense. Every successful extraction was a miracle of logistics and nerves. Every failure was a silent tragedy buried in the black ink of a declassified file. This is the story of those miracles and those tragedies. The story of the bridge that shouldn't have existed, but did. Why the name AEDART? In the cryptonym system of the agency, the prefix AE was a geographical designator for operations within the Soviet Union. The suffix DART was an operational descriptor signifying the intended speed and precision of the extraction. Like a dart thrown with accuracy, the objective was to pierce the Iron Curtain, retrieve the asset, and withdraw before the wound could even be felt. Records suggest the name was chosen by the Office of Scientific Intelligence to differentiate these high-speed biological retrievals from slower, more traditional rat line extractions. Let's look at the cold hard facts of the AEDART policy, intermixed with the voices of those who built it. AEDART was classified as a biological asset recovery policy for high-value Soviet researchers. The policy utilized low-altitude, high-speed aircraft variants for nighttime penetration of Soviet airspace. Records show that extractions were often timed to coincide with major Soviet scientific conferences to explain the sudden disappearance of the target. The agency employed safe houses in Finland and Turkey as primary transit points for AEDART extractions. AEDART audits revealed the use of submersible rendezvous for assets located near the Black Sea. Documentation confirms that eligibility for AEDART required the asset to hold knowledge deemed mission critical to the U.S. missile or nuclear programs. The policy was used to extract a lead physicist from the Dubna nuclear facility in 1962. Records indicate that AEDART was frequently coordinated with the Joint Special Operations Command for tactical support. The agency created ghost passenger manifests for commercial flights out of Vienna to mask the movement of defectors. AEDART files prove that the CIA utilized aerosolized incapacitants to neutralize Soviet security details during extraction. Documentation shows the use of false flagged maritime vessels to transport assets through the Bering Strait. The policy included a self-termination clause for extractors if the mission was compromised inside Soviet borders. AEDART funds were used to provide initial resettlement stipends for scientists arriving at Andrews Air Force Base. The agency utilized a network of discrete medical clinics to provide immediate plastic surgery for extracted assets. Records confirm the use of prop parachutes designed to leave no radar signature for initial insertion of the Snatch-Teams. Technical logs indicate the agency used burst transmission radios to coordinate pickup times with waiting assets. AEDART supported the families of the Cuban defectors who provided early intel on the missiles crisis. Documentation shows that the agency occasionally used deep-sea cable tapping to monitor Soviet security responses during an active extraction. Records confirm that AEDART extractions were prioritized based on the shelf life of the scientist's specific knowledge. The agency maintained quick reaction forces in West Berlin specifically for AEDART emergencies. Records prove that the CIA utilized front relocation services to move assets from the east into secure U.S. domestic suburbs. Declassified memos show the agency used high-altitude balloon recovery systems as a secondary extraction method. AEDART provided identity erasure for assets who were successfully recovered. Documentation confirms the use of suppressed weaponry, specifically chambered for Soviet ammunition to mask the origin of a skirmish. Records show the agency used underwater diver propulsion vehicles for extractions in the Baltic. AEDART coordinated with British intelligence to share safe house routes in the Middle East. Financial logs prove that the agency purchased ghost retirement homes in New Mexico for retired Soviet nuclear scientists. The project utilized fake death certificates filed with the Soviet authorities to stop active manhunts for the defected assets. Records show the use of customs bypassing protocols at European borders to move assets without paperwork. AEDART funded the Education Trust for the children of defectors to ensure their long-term integration. Documentation reveals the use of modified B-17s for long-range, low-level flights into the Soviet interior. Records prove that the CIA utilized in-place informants within the KGB to provide the exact timing of security rotations. Field manuals verify that Snatch-Teams were trained in high-speed defensive driving and urban evasion. Technical audits show the use of inertial navigation systems long before they were standard in commercial aviation. Logistical files confirm the use of C-47 aircraft modified with specialized exhaust mufflers for low-noise infiltration. Records show the agency maintained cold storage for Soviet documents stolen during the extraction phase. Declassified budget lines indicate the use of gold sovereigns as emergency bribe money for border guards. Operational logs show the coordination with the Office of Naval Intelligence for coastal extraction support. Documentation proves the use of miniature cameras to photograph Soviet lab layouts before the asset was extracted. Records verify that over 30% of AEDART targets were nuclear physicists. The agency utilized remote-controlled explosives to destroy sensitive equipment left behind during a botched extraction. Records confirm that AEDART personnel were issued L-pills, lethal cyanide capsules, for use in the event of capture. Documentation shows the agency used scent masking agents to prevent Soviet tracking dogs from following extraction teams. AEDART utilized seaplane rendezvous points in the Caspian Sea. Records show the CIA maintained currency printing presses specifically to create high-quality Soviet rubles for the program. Technical audits reveal the use of passive sonar to guide submersible extraction vessels to silent docking points. Declassified files show the agency used weather modification experiments, cloud seeding, to create cover for low-level flights. Documentation proves that AEDART teams were trained in lockpicking and safe cracking to secure Soviet data alongside the human asset. Agency ledgers reveal the purchase of over 1,000 sets of civilian Soviet winter clothing to ensure extraction teams blended in perfectly. Declassified medical files indicate that assets were often given temporary memory suppressants to prevent panic during the physical extraction. Logistical reports show the use of ice-breaking submersibles for extractions in the Arctic Circle. Records confirm the establishment of a false university in the American Midwest to house and monitor extracted assets. Documentation shows the use of shortwave numbers stations to broadcast the final go signal to teams in the field. Technical logs verify the modification of Soviet-made trucks with American engines for superior escape velocity. Field reports indicate that AEDART teams often carried counterfeit artifacts to trade with local black market contacts for transport. Records prove the agency used magnetic holing to attach extraction pods to the sides of neutral cargo ships. Internal memos show that the program utilized psychological profiles to predict which Soviet scientists were most prone to defection. Audits reveal that the AEDART program had a higher per capita budget than many official U.S. embassy operations. Documentation confirms the use of hidden compartments in exported grain shipments to move assets across the Ukrainian border. Records verify that Snatch-Teams were fluent in at least 3 regional Soviet dialects to facilitate evasion. A quote from a declassified internal operational directive. Also, it's marked as AEDART 6, so that means a person. The retrieval of the scientific target must be executed with such velocity that the Soviet state is left debating whether a kidnapping or a defection has even occurred. Quote from a declassified field report, extraction lead, dated 1961. Speed is the only defense when operating within the internal security perimeter of the Moscow Scientific District. Quote from a declassified scientific intelligence review, we are not just taking a man, we are taking 20 years of state-funded research and delivering it to the West. A quote from a declassified DCI briefing paper that has the name redacted, the glass bridge is a two-way street. For every scientist we bring out, we leave a trail of doubt in the Soviet command. Quote from a declassified agency field manual, section 4, failure to extract the target under AEDART protocols requires the immediate destruction of all associated operational materials to maintain plausible deniability. Quote from a declassified training instructor memo, the psychological readiness of the team is paramount. They must view the border not as a barrier, but as a door they hold the key to. And a quote from a declassified operational contingency plan, if the perimeter is breached, the team is to prioritize the asset over the extraction vehicle. The body must not fall back into Soviet hands, end quote. We must now face the black ink. The heaviest redactions in the AEDART files occur in Section 12, in-place neutralization, and Appendix J, failed recovery protocol. Over 1,200 pages are completely obscured. The government cites FOIA Exemption B1 and, again, the CIA Act of 1949. The official reason is to protect the sovereign border penetration techniques and the identities of high-level Soviet collaborators who may still be alive or whose families remain in Russia. Now, let's step off the map. You might hear whispers that those 1,200 blacked out pages hide the negative asset protocol. This line of thinking suggests AEDART wasn't just for extraction, but for neutralization. Meaning if a scientist couldn't be taken alive, then Snatch-Team was ordered to ensure the brilliance never reached a Soviet lab, effectively turning extraction into assassination. Looking at the gaps, some wonder about the replacement hypothesis. This theory posits that in certain cases, the agency successfully extracted a scientist and replaced them with a double trained to feed the Soviets subtly flawed data for years before dying in a staged accident. The redactions in this view hide the names of the plastic surgery twins who lived and died in the East as ghosts. Then there's a dark theory concerning the brain drain lighthouse. This speculation suggests that AEDART utilized psychological manipulation and subliminal broadcasting near Soviet research cities to induce a state of profound depression and desire to defect and targeted scientists, essentially luring them to the extraction points like moths to a flame. Then there is the theory of the sleeper reversal clause. Some speculate the redactions cover instances where extracted scientists were actually double agents and the glass bridge was actually a pipeline for the KGB to plant deep cover biological threats inside American laboratories. And then lastly, some whisper and suggest that the reason for the redactions is tied to genetic harvest operations. Some theorists believe that the AEDART missions were specifically focused on extracting scientists who were working on the early frontiers of genetic modification. The rumor is that the agency wasn't just after current knowledge, but was trying to secure the physical DNA and research lineages of the smartest humans on Earth to ensure a competitive advantage for the US in a future post-human arms race. Was AEDART a success? Tactically, it was surgical. The agency successfully executed over 40 extractions deep within Soviet territory during its active phase. By snatching the brains of the Soviet nuclear program, the US was able to bridge the missile gap in record time. It proved that a small, highly trained team could breach the most secure borders on Earth if they had the right velocity and value. The lack of public awareness of these missing scientists for years afterward is a testament to the cleanliness of the operations. The precision of the timing minimized civilian casualties and kept the diplomatic fallout virtually non-existent. It demonstrated that speed could overcome the most fortified physical barriers in the world. Strategically, it was decisive. It crippled the long-term R&D cycles of the USSR. Every scientist removed wasn't just a gain for the West, it was a decade of progress lost for the East. It forced the Soviets to redirect massive resources into internal security, paralyzing their scientific community with a culture of suspicion. The glass bridge became the most effective form of non-kinetic warfare in the early Cold War, proving that the most valuable territory in a war is the 6 inches between an enemy's ear. It fundamentally shifted the technological advantage towards the United States by draining the Soviet intellectual reservoir. The psychological impact on the Soviet high command led to a drastic reduction in their offensive R&D momentum. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs are concerned, the innovations born from AEDART have reshaped modern life. Such as low observable night navigation, AEDART perfected the use of terrain-following radar for small aircraft to fly below Soviet radar nets. This is now the bedrock of special operations aviation and autonomous drone navigation in denied airspace. Rapid response biometric forgery. The project developed portable kits for the immediate creation of high-fidelity passports and ID documents in the field. This is now used by elite counterterrorism units and deep cover operatives to maintain fluid identities in transit. In-flight medical stabilization pods. AEDART designed specialized pods to keep high-value assets stable and sedated during high-G extractions. This evolved into the modern medical evacuation systems used to transport wounded soldiers from active war zones. And aerosolized selective sedation. The project pioneered chemical compounds that could render a room unconscious in seconds without long-term neurological damage. Modern non-lethal tactical gases used in hostage rescue operations and high-threat riot control by specialized law enforcements owe their very existence to this. AEDART is the ultimate proof that in the world of shadows, brilliance is a target. It reminds us that the state's memory is as long as its ledger, and that sometimes the only thing keeping a genius safe is a nameless team waiting in the dark with a one-way ticket to the west. The glass bridge still stands invisible and cold. In the end, we are all just assets to be valued or spent. The bridge may be made of glass, but the blood spilled to cross it was very real. Even now, the ghost of extracted minds whisper through the corridors of power. Thanks for listening. Watch the horizons for shadows that move too fast. Keep your most valuable ideas off the grid, and never assume the bridge behind you has actually been burned. Join us next time as we examine brutal kangaroo. The wall is no longer made of concrete, it's made of air. We'll uncover the technical suite behind Brutal Kangaroo, the CIA's ingenious malware framework designed to leap across the air gap and infect the most isolated networks on the planet. It's a story of digital infiltration via the most mundane tool in your pocket, the USB drive. Join us next time for The Jump. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.